teepee is all done. We look at all these structures and are kind of like, oh, this one's not done and this one's not done, but this one's all done. It has an amazing Cobb-style rocket mass heater in it that has been tested for 3 winters and has been awesome. The big experiment, the first big experiment that we had here was to put a rocket mass heater into a teepee. And a lot of people get confused over the 3 different kinds of heat. So there's convective heat, which is heating the air, and then the air heats you. That's the least efficient form of heat, but that's the most common way that people heat their homes. Then there's radiant heat. So for example, the sun is a source of radiant heat. It's over there, it's really hot, I can feel the warmth on my face. And then the most efficient form of heat is conductive heat. And that's what we're going to have a lot of in here, where there's going to be a warm bench, and when you sit on it or when you touch it, you feel the warmth, and that heats you. It's not even very warm, but it heats you a lot. So what we have here is a lot of conductive heat, a bit of radiant heat, and really very little convective heat. There was a couple that was living in here. They one night it got to be 26 below and they didn't know how cold it was outside, so they got up and they took off their night clothes and got into their day clothes, and they said that it felt like the temperature inside was a little over 50. And it wasn't until they got outside until they realized that it was bitter cold outside. So
okay. When you were talking to Erica when you did your new video series, you were talking about how these were meant to be summer residents. Native Americans did not stay in these during the winter.
A teepee is designed for summer use only. The only reason why you ever see pictures of teepees in winter is when something was happening. The Indians were forced to live in a particular place in winter where they didn't have winter residence, and so then they lived in a teepee. So even though they've got a teepee and then there'll be a fire in the middle to keep them warm, that's not really for winter. That's more for like, oh, it's summertime and it got a little chilly this one particular day. Let's make a little fire inside to give us a little bit of warmth. And of course, part of that is that you have the fire in the middle, and then everybody's sitting around the fire, and then the smoke goes up, but it kind of bottles. And so then from this level higher, it's all smoky. So you gotta sit on the floor or else you're gonna be sucking smoke. So a teepee itself is kind of designed to be a chimney. The idea is that, you know, the warm air keeps moving up, and then along the bottom edge of the teepee is open to the outside. And so air comes into the bottom and goes up through the teepee. So the whole thing is designed to have air pass through it, not hold air inside. And so we're doing a lot of weird stuff inside of a structure that's not designed to hold this weird stuff. But we did it anyway, and it worked great. And the fire went out at 9 o'clock, and when they got out of bed in the morning, it was still very warm inside, even though there'd been no fire for like 8 hours.
Now, I participated in the Kickstarter that you just did that was kind of going into these different ways of building and managing your rocket mass heaters. And so this was like the ultimate test that you tried out for that video, as part of that video. And so different structures, same types of heaters, and sometimes different types of heaters, but all the rocket mass information.
So we have a lot of standard rocket mass heater designs and a lot of non-standard rocket mass heater designs. So we're constantly experimenting with a lot of different things. But the thing is that we're not having trouble with teaching people how to build a rocket mass heater. Where we're really struggling is that people are having a hard time believing that a rocket mass heater works as advertised. So when we say you heat a home with 1/10 of the wood, there's all these hurdles It's like, no, people are sure, no, it doesn't do that, and no, it doesn't do that. So we need to come up with ways to prove that this works, to prove it. And so this is one of those things. We built a rocket mass heater in a teepee. Everybody knows a teepee is a non-insulated space. There is no insulation. And everybody knows that air moves through a teepee. And so there's nothing in a teepee that's going to line up with an insulated home. And yet these people stayed warm 8 hours after the fire had gone out, and it was 26 degrees below zero outside. And the funny, bizarre thing is that most people have it in their head that if you go to the store and you buy a wood stove and it says 75% efficient, they're sure that that's the truth. What they don't realize is that, first of all, it's actually 59% efficient, but they're allowed that 16% for heat that goes up the chimney. So it's actually a 59% efficient wood stove. And then the other thing is that they're not aware of how it's tested in the lab, and that they'll monkey with little tiny factors of like using kiln dried wood, which nobody is using to heat their home, and they're like increasing the air pressure in the room where it's being tested in order to be able to push more air through the system. But a typical home is kind of like a Ziploc bag, and as you burn a fire in it, then the air is pulled out of the room, and then it's like the pressure inside is lower, so it's harder for the air to get into the stove system. So these are all factors that are not in the laboratory where they got this number, 75% efficient. And when people put a big log on the fire at night and go to bed, they're actually running their stove at 3% efficiency. So they look at this pumped up number as part of the advertising for a conventional wood stove, and they say there's no way you could heat a home with 1/10 the wood. That means that they're buying into the marketing until somebody proves the marketing wrong. I'm trying to prove the marketing wrong. We put a rocket mass heater in a teepee, and it got to be 26 degrees below zero, and people felt like it was more than 50 degrees inside. They changed their clothes one morning, and the fire had been out for at least 8 hours. Mission accomplished.
Were they shorter than us? Or am I just not flexible?
I think you lost a water bottle.
Paige, can you hand me the water bottle? Thank you.
Wow, it's pretty.
This is really pretty in here.
Barbara. Isn't this
So this would really count as a tiny house. How many square feet is this, do you think? 100? About 100?
Well, let's see. The original teepee was 18 feet in diameter.
Is this a fun place to hang out in?
Yeah.
So a lot of the space is taken up by the bench itself. So maybe it would feel like it was more space if it was all stand-up space. Because I don't know that you can count the edges as like walking type space. So maybe it wouldn't.
It's reduced because of that.
Yeah.
Big points.
And you've got the big bench in here.
We spent a lot of money on a buckwheat hull mattress in organic cotton to have something, and it was crazy how expensive it was.
Sure.
To have something totally natural that wouldn't off-gas anything for the people sleeping here. But this is not, but it was actually kind of hard and we had guests complain. So Janet made a straw mattress.
Oh, how fun.
That's what that is now, because people didn't like, the buckwheat hull was too firm.
They felt like it was a little like sleeping on pebbles.
Well, yeah, it was in tubes, and you were supposed to twist the tubes just right, and it really worked better if you had something you could put over the top that would fill in all the holes of the little tubey lumps.
Mm-hmm.
And we no longer had the topper that would fill in on the top. So between not having a topper and it being a little hard, people have been happier with the straw mattress Janet made.
It feels pretty comfy.
Is it a songbird or is it a chipmunk?
I don't know.
So this is a space that I think people like to come and stay here in the wintertime because you really drink in the power of a rocket mass heater then. So if you're even a little bit skeptical, then you come and you burn some wood and you feel the heat coming off of it, and then the fire goes out, and you know that if this were a conventional wood stove and the fire goes out, you know it would instantly get super cold in here. So like let's say there's snow on the ground outside, and we did this, what was it, last year or the year before? I think it was the year before or last. Where we came in here and it was like 20 outside and there was snow on the ground. It was January 1st.
My son visited and it was 17 degrees outside. And, you're bundled up for winter, 17 degree weather outside. And we came in here, and even sitting here, the closer you are to the barrel, the hotter it is. Even sitting here, we had to take our coats and hats off. It was like 90 degrees in here.
Yeah, it was very warm in here.
It was amazing. My son was like,
In the
I
fire.
would love to stay in here in the winter because, he immediately got it. No one would think you would be that warm. So warm you had to, start taking things off. Now, they did have a skirt around the inside. I don't think it's called a skirt, or maybe it is. There's something you hang around the inside just for an extra layer. And they did do a canvas ozone, which is brought the ceiling down. Normally, teepees don't have that because you want the hole in the top for the smoke. They usually have fires in the middle that are open fires and the smoke goes straight up. But they had a canvas ozone and then skirt and some blankets around the sides. And that did help have it not be
Keep the airflow.
so porous with with the heat and the cold.
But you can kind of see along the bottom where you can see outside.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see in a lot of different places where, there's open air to the open outdoors, including, up through the top. And, the big thing is once this thing gets warmed up, once the mass is warm, this is a very comfortable space.
And this, one of our Ant Village guys was awesome about staying in here before he moved onto his plot and before we started renting it out, because the canvas will last a lot longer if you keep it dry or it gets dried out. Mm-hmm. So we've already replaced the canvas once, and it's already showing signs of moisture damage. Starts fairly quickly on canvas. They're not meant to be.
They're not leather.
Yeah, and the more we have people in here heating it up and drying out the canvas, the longer the canvas will last. And one of the last people to stay in it during the winter, Alenka, she was awesome about going around outside and brushing the snow off so that, while the snow is still frozen and dry, kind of dryish, and so it wouldn't be melting on the canvas and just soaking into the canvas. So that made a big difference too.
And didn't you say that you raised the floor in here so that when things melted, they ran downhill rather than into the teepee?
Right, when we very first built the structure, we had like a dirt pad that we started with, more accurately, that we kind of dug away from this pad to build on. So that way, if there got to be any water, and we've got outside, it's kind of like there's a little depression outside, so that way if water runs down the side of the teepee, it'll go into this little depression, and then that'll run around the teepee out the front, and so all the water is taken away from the teepee. So we don't want to keep water around. We don't want there to be mud puddles, because mud puddles, if there's a mud puddle outside, then it'll soak into the ground and it'll wick into this space. We don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, most yurts are built on a wood platform, and so we've talked that in some ways it'd be nice to have somewhat of a wood platform for the teepee as well, but we already built the bench right on the dirt, so it'd be a little bit tough, but you could build a wood platform around the bench that could also help get the teepee off the ground so it wouldn't wick up moisture as much.
Because normally you'd have a floor in between your stove and the floor. So do you have problems with the water wicking up into the cob? That's why you put the rock first?
Yeah. Yeah, so water won't wick up into the cob. Yeah, Emily and Tony did that. They love to stack rocks. So they're awesome. They're an awesome couple. So there's things we could do better, but this has been one of the more popular places for people to stay. Yeah, the other thing we could create is kind of like a cubicle entrance. And Emily and Tony kind of did that when they lived in here. They hung a string with a heavy blanket so that you'd go out that blanket before you went out the door. So it was almost like a little entryway or cubicle.
Mm-hmm.
But there are things you can get for teepees that work like that outside. Kind of like, some tents have that extra little...
Like a mud room.
Yeah.
I've got a mud room in my teepee.
Yeah. Yeah.